Hey guys, I'm Adam from Ace Engineering, and today we're going to do the overview and install of our upper decker. So I guess to start with, this is what you're going to receive, obviously the upper decker and a box of parts, and let's kind of go through what you get and what comes with the kit. So first thing is a pack of hardware, a pack of seals, the hinges, latches, and keepers for the latches, and a package of two 75-pound shocks. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is find our hinges, and there's a right hand and left hand. And the way you're going to understand this is there's a large side of the hinge and a small side of the hinge. The small side of the hinge will go directly to these holes here, with the large side inboard. So this is the bulkhead of the Jeep. So if we come down here, we're going to install this like this with a large tab on the inside, and it'll be mirror image to the other side. So a M5 bolt and washer down through the top, and a lock washer on the bottom. All right, so we're going to tighten both hinges up on the front of the upper decker. Obviously, this is the front of the upper decker where it bolts against the bulkhead. So our stainless hardware, and you can tell this is right. So the large lug is inward, and the small lug is bolted to the upper decker. So this is what it looks like. So basically, we're going to take this, we're going to set it up on the Jeep, push this so it's in a 90 degree position up against the bulkhead. We're going to mark these holes, these 4 holes. Then we're going to put the threaded insert in it so we can bolt this to the Jeep itself. All right, so we've got the hinges in location. The next step is locate your 2 different style seals. One's going to be a long D-shaped profile. That'll be for the perimeter of the upper decker. This one right here, as you can see, that's the profile. This is for the front of the bulkhead. So we're going to install this first before we set the upper decker into place. All right, so we're going to install the bulkhead seal. So I want to take isopropyl alcohol or denatured alcohol. Just give it a quick once over here to get rid of any contamination so we get good adhesion of the strip. So basically what we want to do is, if you look at this radius here on the top of the bulkhead, we're going to start all the way against the cap on the frame rail, and it's going to go just like that. So the front of this is flush with the top of the radius, not to the bed, to this radius here, the top of the radius. So we're going to install it just like that down the entire bed. All right, so we've got the seal into position. Now we're going to set the upper decker into place. The hinges are in the 90 degree position, which this will mount flush against the bulkhead. So this is where you're going to need 2 people. You're going to want to lift this up into position. Try not to set it on the bed rail cap and slide it, because you don't want any of this digging in and scratching the bed rail cap. So we're going to set it up, drop it into position, and then move it in small increments to make sure it's square. And we'll get to that next. For orientation purposes, where we mounted the hinges, you'll see there's 4 holes at the top of this. If you look towards the bottom or the back towards the tailgate, this is where the shock will mount, and this is where the latches mount. So for starters, when you mount the hinges, it's obviously the 4 lone holes at the front, not the ones near the shock mount. Just for initial placement, you'll see that the edge of the basket is just inside this second rib here, or first rib. So now that we've got it in position, we're going to mark the 2 holes on each hinge with a marker, and then we're going to slide the basket back, and we're going to add our threaded inserts in. All right, so now that we've got the upper decker centered between the ribs on the rail caps, and this is at 90 degrees flush against the bulkhead, we're just going to mark the center of these holes. All right, so for the front of the bulkhead installation, now that we've got it marked, we're going to drill the holes for the M5 inserts and the M5 bolts, not to be confused with the M4 inserts that you'll be using later. So let's make sure we get the M5 bolt and the M5 insert, and that's what we'll be using on the next step. All right, so we see our witness marks up here on the bulkhead. That's where we're going to drill and put our M5 inserts. All right, after we run the pilot drill in, we're going to want the diameter to a 19/64. So that'll give us a nice snug fit for our threaded insert, our nutsert. Sometimes you can use like a 1/4 inch and kind of open it up a little bit, but you want to be very careful to make sure you have as tight as fit as possible for the nutsert to grab the material. You also want to be careful. We don't want to push through and run into the bulkhead of the Jeep. So just want to make sure right before you blow through, slow it down a little bit so it doesn't press all the way through. You don't want to run into the vehicle. All right, so now that we've got the whole diameter where we need it, it's time to put on our threaded insert. So here's our nutsert tool. I've got this one off of Amazon. It was like 40 bucks, all the different sizes of heads for different bolts, standard and metric. Home Depot, hardware store, those type of places you can pick one up too. But now that we've got the hole where we want it, we're gonna make sure this is a nice, tight fit in. We're gonna crimp it. We're gonna tighten this up one more time, give it another pull. Back it back out. And there we go, we've got the threaded insert. There is some room behind this that initially we're talking about bolting on their side, but it's so hard to get your hand back there, but I think it would be possible to run the bolt through and put a nut on the back, but we chose to go with the threaded nutsert option. All right, we're gonna repeat this step on the other side. All right, now we've got those installed. We slide the gate or the upper decker back into position, and we'll run our 4 M5 bolts into position, and we can bolt on the rest of the hardware. If we take a look inside, we can see the holes line up. When we get in there, we might shimmy it around a little bit, but we're gonna take our M5 bolts and we're gonna go tighten the hinges to the bulkhead now. All right, so we've got the hinges and everything installed. The basket is in location. You can see it centered inside the ribs, so we're ready to move on to the shocks and the latches. So let's open our shocks and kind of grab the hardware we need. First thing we're going to do is grab some wrenches. We're going to tighten all these brackets on our shock nice and snug. All right. So now we've got a left hand and right hand shock. We're going to get mounted with the tube of the shock up in location. This is the driver's side left. This bracket is going to go up to those holes that are in the upper decker provision. So we're going to bolt those in first. Bolts through, nuts on the bottom. We're going to grab our 5/16 bolts and washers, and we can just drop them through for now. This location there, in there. So we're going to tighten the bolts to the shock right now. I put a jack stand in the center to hold it up, kind of make ease of installation. You can use anything to wedge it open for now, but that seems to work real well. Okay. All right, so next we're going to remove the tail lights. There's two 8mm bolts on the inside of the tail lights. Both sides, we're going to drop them out of the way. The other side of the shock, through bolts come through, and we'll attach the nuts to the inside, so it's bolted through the steel of the bed. All right, so we're going to use this factory hole located here for the top of the mounting bracket. So basically, we wedged the upper decker up so we didn't fight the shock. So you're going to see that that goes there, and we're going to take a bolt and just run it through the hole. The nut will go on the inside now that we've accessed the, remove the tail light. So we're going to line this up. Make sure this is straight up and down. And then we're going to mark a hole right there. So we're going to drill the secondary hole, and then when we run the bolts through, we can put both nuts on the back of the shock. All right, so the hole we're drilling is just a clearance hole for the 7/16 bolt, just so it fits through. So I've got the top one in, the bolt through, and I'm starting the nut on the backhand side. You kind of got to wedge your hand up inside the tail light area, but I've got it started there. So now we'll drop in the bottom one. This is where small hands might help, or get a helper, because it is a tight fit. All right, so now I've got both nuts just started, so now we can go ahead and tighten this side up, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And again, for this bolt that we're adding, the factory hole, the bolt will fall through. This hole right here, it's for a 7/16 clearance hole, so just that the bolt passes through. This one's pretty difficult to get to, but a stubby 1/2-inch wrench will, you can get in there. All right, this side's tight. Perfect. Let's do the same thing to the other side. Shocks are in location. You see, it takes quite a bit of force to bring it down into position, and that's due to the 75-pound shock. Obviously, with some light gear, a couple bikes, this is still going to hold everything up. You start getting into spare tires, rooftop tents. Obviously, these shocks are not going to do that. You can upgrade, put a stronger shock on if you want. The problem with that is when you don't have anything in it, you've got to give it a lot of force to bring it down. So this is a real happy medium of quite a bit of gear on top, but obviously anything super heavy is spare typically. You're going to want to stow underneath. But so this part's done. Everything's in position, lines up, hinges nicely. So now we're ready for the seals on the side and the back. All right, so we're going to install the seals now. There's a couple different ways we can do it. Well, the first thing we're going to do though is loosen the hinge on one side so we can have a little bit of clearance between the upper decker and the rail cap, because we want the seal under here. You can do it two different ways. So we can take this seal. You can see the profile. We want the longer, wider profile to the inside of the vehicle. So we can put this in here, in between this first rib all the way down, or we can mount it on the gatekeeper itself. You know, the pros and cons, I think, of either are, if you're getting a lot of gear out through the side, you don't want to rub on this seal over time, you know, you might want to put it up on the upper decker. We're going to choose to put it down here on the rail itself. I don't think that's an issue. We're going to load or unload from the back most of the time. And the reason we don't put it on before we install the upper decker is if we have this in position and we're moving the basket around, we never want it to tear or move the seal. So now at this point, we're going to install it. What I'm going to do is loosen this hinge just so we have a little bit of clearance here. And I can put this underneath on the inside of this rib. So it'll run all the way down the length of the vehicle. Same thing, some isopropyl alcohol, denatured alcohol. We're going to clean all this up. We can close this, kind of make a witness mark here with a Sharpie or a dry erase marker, just to know where we're going to stop. But we're running all the way down, close it, and then trim to that edge. So we're going to trim for this length, and then we're going to put another little piece here to go across the back. But first, let's start with the side. So now we've loosened the the nuts on the bottom of the bolts that hold the hinge to the upper decker. You don't have to take them all the way up, just enough clearance. This is all we're trying to do. We want to lift this up just so we can lay the seal down underneath this. That's all we're trying to do. we'll get that started. And then we come back and trim this excess right there. Basically right inside that rail, so it's a nice guide to keep it nice and straight all the way down. Moving the backing as you go. All right, just gonna let that hang over for a second. Make sure this is seated, sealed. All right, so we've got this side done. Now we can drop this. I'll look at where we're at. You can see it starts there, so I'm just gonna take a blade and trim that off. So we're going to trim this little bit of seal back. All right, now that we've got that in position, we're going to close the I'll tighten that bolt first, but then I want the pressure of the upper decker on the seal for a little bit. Just let it seat and stay in location. So we're going to take our latches now and we're going to connect them to the upper decker. There's 2 holes that are already here in provision, so we're going to mount like this on each side to these 2 holes into position. That's through our latch. All right, orientate this nice and square. This side parallel to outside of the upper decker. All right, so we got our lashes installed, and last but not least is the keeper, and this is what secures the back of the upper decker into place. So what we're going to do here is we're going to release the tab for the keeper. And you're going to see, basically, this is going to get installed, so when this grabs onto the keeper and you pull this down, it cam locks it into place. It's going to pull up on it. So we'll adjust this later. But where you want to install this is, if you look at the side of the bed here, it's straight, and then the radius starts right about here. We're going to put that on center, so this lines up in the center of the keeper, but right down there, so right at the edge of where the radius starts. So we're going to line that up right about there, mark a couple holes, and then we'll adjust the length of the catch as soon as we get this installed. So we want it on center of the keeper, down here where it's straight, right before the radius, so it's on a flat surface. We're going to hold it there and mark it. Do the same thing to the other side. Now that we've got the holes marked for the keeper, we're going to drill that 17/64 hole diameter so we can use our M4 threaded nut cert. So now we've got the threaded inserts into position. Now we're going to take our keeper and bolt it into position. All right, so we've got our keepers installed. Now we can lower the upper decker. And now is when we want to adjust this. Holding the latch up, we'll back this out. We'll back it out until it wants to fall underneath the keeper. Which is about right there on its own. So from there, it falls underneath within the up position. So now we'll tighten our jam nut up. And I put a little pressure on it. That helps orientate the latch into place. We can tighten that. We've got that this falls under. Give it a little bit of pressure. Tighten the jam nut. All right, so now we know this side. Once you pull it down, you can see the cam, pull it up and lock it into position. So we'll do the same thing to the other side. All right, so we've got everything bolted down. The latches are done. We've got that quick release on each side. See when it falls under, locks into place. So everything's finished on the upper decker itself. Now it's time to finish this last seal across the back. And what we're gonna do is, you can see there's still a void in this area. We're gonna run it all the way across the bottom of the upper decker to seal against the deck lip, or the tailgate. All right, now that we've got everything installed, the last is the D-shaped seal, and that's gonna go along this radius on the back of the upper decker all the way through. So we wanna basically start right here at the edge of the top of the cap for the bed rail. We're gonna go all the way across to the edge of the bed rail here. This little void in the center, the original seal that we used down the length of the sides, we're gonna cut a little piece that'll go in there to seal that. We're gonna put right on the radius. All the way against it, right on the radius. So basically, when it's on the radius like this, it's almost at a 45-degree angle down towards the tailgate. You can move this around a couple times, but once it's really on there, you want to give it time to adhere, and it kind of strengthens with time. Alright, so let's just trim this guy up. Alright, now that we got it started, we're going to go back and seal it all the way around. Now that we've got it in position, I want to close the tailgate, and that'll put pressure on it and let it adhere in place. There we go. Perfect. So the only thing we have is just that little opening there, which we're going to use that original seal that was down the length of the upper decker. We'll put that on next. Go. Perfect. Perfect. So now Close this. Latch. Latch pulls it down. Now you can see seal around the entire perimeter. All right, so that wraps up the install of the upper decker. There are a lot of options for the upper decker. We have Rotopax mounts, rooftop tent mounts, different provisions. So what we've done is we put holes all the way around the perimeter of the upper decker, so that way you put it in any location. So it's simply taking that mount, finding the hole sequence that you want, and mounting your accessory.